In order to be with her husband again, she cloned her dead husband into her womb and gave birth to him. Looking at her belly growing day by day, she was full of anticipation. Every day she would come to her husband's grave to pray, hoping that his spirit in heaven would bless her with a safe delivery. After 10 months of pregnancy, the child was finally born. And when she saw this son who looked exactly like her late husband, she was both shocked and overjoyed, because now she could be with him again. When he was young, she raised him as her son, but when he grew up, she treated him as her husband. And in the end, she even had another child with her son. What kind of mind could come up with such a story that overturns all common sense? This is the 2010 film Womb. It is both a science fiction film and an ethical drama, using the shell of science fiction to explore morality and using morality to criticize love. Rebecca's husband Thomas died unexpectedly in a car accident, and she could not accept that the man she loved had left her just like that. So in order to bring him back, she resolutely accepted a cloning procedure, implanting Thomas's clone into her womb, and all she needed to do next was wait 10 months to give birth. For the health of the child in her womb, she drank the best milk and ate the most nutritious food. Finally, the day of delivery came, and she successfully gave birth to a baby boy named Tommy. Looking at this baby boy before her eyes, she only hoped he would grow up quickly. Time flew by, years passed, and her son was about to start elementary school, but she kept the fact that he was a clone hidden from him. When her son asked about his father, she would tell him that his father had died in a car accident before he was born. However, as her son gradually grew up, Rebecca's feelings toward him no longer stayed purely in the realm of mother and son. She would slip into Tommy's bed and cross boundaries, and even when bathing, there was no avoidance, both facing each other openly. Looking at this son who looked exactly like her husband, she tried to find traces of her lost lover in this cloned life. Under her influence over the years, Tommy's understanding of relationships became increasingly blurred. In his eyes, Rebecca was his mother, but sometimes she was not, because the way she looked at him was not the way other mothers looked at their children. She thought life could continue peacefully like this, but after Tommy entered school, he often brought female classmates home, which made her feel uncomfortable, as if someone else was taking away her husband. But she could not show such emotions in front of outsiders. Although cloning technology had been legally permitted at the time, it still went against ethics and was not accepted by most people. A little girl named Dima was also a clone, a classmate of Tommy's, and Rebecca did not like her son having so many female friends.
Wouldn't you like to come and play at our house, Dima?
No, thank you.
Hearing what Dima said, she felt secretly pleased, but she still did not show it. Just then, her son suddenly said that Dima had a special smell, like glass cleaner. This was unique to clones. Sometimes it would emit from their skin for others to notice. And Dima's birth was because her mother cloned her own mother and gave birth to her. The next day, the neighbors suddenly came to her because their children said that Rebecca had invited Dima to her house yesterday. What they meant to say was that although they did not openly discriminate against clones, they did not want their own children playing with clones, because clones were products that violated ethics. Every life is unique and should not be copied, because otherwise it loses the meaning of its existence. She did not expect the prejudice against clones to be so great, and if they found out that Tommy was also a clone, they would surely treat him as an outcast and forbid their children to associate with him. And what she feared most happened as the doctor who had cloned her husband suddenly came to the town for a visit, and when she saw Tommy, she revealed to the entire town that he was a clone. When Tommy's birthday came, Rebecca decorated everything meticulously and planned to invite friends to celebrate at home. But when she called them, without exception, they all refused with excuses. With no other choice, mother and son had to celebrate alone, and Tommy was confused, wondering why suddenly no one came anymore. Rebecca did not know how to answer. Should she tell him he was a clone and not welcomed by others? Clearly it was not yet time. She could not think of a good reason at the moment.
Their mothers wouldn't let them.
Why not?
Because they're stupid.
But such a reason could not deceive a 10-year-old child. Looking at his mother's tearful face, Tommy could not bear to ask further, so he went up to hug her and give her comfort. His thoughtfulness only made Rebecca feel more guilty because she had cloned him for her own selfishness, and now he had to bear such loneliness. She wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. Later, mother and son moved to the seaside, where she and her husband once lived in a small cabin, so that her son would no longer have to endure the stares of others. Here they could play freely, without caring about the eyes of outsiders. One day Tommy discovered 2 giant isopods on the beach. According to research, this species had existed for 160 million years and was a true living fossil. To her surprise, her son was interested in ancient creatures, so she bought him a moving dinosaur toy, which Tommy loved, even giving it a name. One morning, when mother and son were on an abandoned ship watching the sea, a boy named Mark came over. He lived not far away. It was clear that he was a warm person, wanting to be friends with Tommy. Seeing this, Rebecca was also happy, because her son needed a friend his own age, since she sometimes had to work and could not always accompany him, and as long as it was not a girl, she was fine with it. That night, Tommy suddenly asked her, "Were you there when Dad died?" Then he asked again, "What kind of car accident was it?" This was a scar Rebecca was unwilling to touch. Faced with her son's repeated questions, she remained silent because she was inextricably linked to this accident. The next day, mother and son played together on the swing outside the house, and while playing, they started wrestling. Rebecca deliberately let her son push her down so that he could fall on top of her. Tommy pinned his mother firmly to the ground, and then a sentence he blurted out made people's imaginations wander.
Now I could do whatever I want with you.
Go ahead.
Rebecca's cheeks flushed red, and looking at Tommy's face identical to her husband's, she felt a wave of indescribable trembling as memories of the past surged back like a tide. Just as things between mother and son turned ambiguous, Mark's arrival instantly shattered the delicate atmosphere. After her son left, Rebecca lay on the beach gazing at the blue sky, unable to calm her heart. Since Tommy had Mark as a playmate, he no longer relied on the dinosaur toy as much as before. He and Mark buried the dinosaur model in the sand, because Tommy believed that such an ancient creature should return to nature. However, Rebecca's desire for control over Tommy was very strong, and in her eyes, she would not allow anything to slip away from her grasp. So while Tommy wasn't paying attention, she dug out the dinosaur model again and took it home. Seeing this, Tommy felt a trace of suppression in his heart. And so, under Rebecca's absolute control, he grew up day by day. But what Rebecca had never expected was that as Tommy grew older, he had other women. As she brought breakfast to Tommy as usual, she discovered an extra pair of feet on the bed, slender and fair, clearly belonging to a girl. Rebecca's heart skipped a beat, and a sour jealousy instantly spread within her. This young and beautiful girl was Monica, Tommy's new girlfriend. She greeted Rebecca and then nestled into Tommy's arms. Rebecca felt as if a needle had pierced her heart, and she quickly turned her head and hurriedly left. Tommy had no idea what his mother was feeling and even told her that Monica would be moving into their house. Although Rebecca said she agreed, in her heart she could not help but feel bitter, as if her son had been silently taken away. Not long after, Monica really moved in. Tommy was with her every day, endlessly talking, their sweetness enough to make others envious. Rebecca, silently watching from the corner, was filled with conflict and struggle. On the one hand, she tried to play the role of a mother and respect Tommy's life, but on the other, she could not suppress her obsession with her lover deep in her heart. Watching Tommy and his girlfriend being so affectionate, Rebecca's jealousy tore at her sanity like a beast, but she could only suppress her feelings and endure the pain in silence. She became gloomy and withdrawn, locking herself in her room, and when her son and his girlfriend brought her homemade pastries, she only set them aside, saying she wasn't hungry. When she saw Tommy and Monica chasing each other on the beach and kissing passionately, an indescribable grievance instantly surged in her heart. The man who looked exactly like her husband was now lying in someone else's arms, and he was no longer the little Tommy who had clung to her as a child. The grievance in her heart made Rebecca throw a childish tantrum. She lay on the bed with her back to them, unwilling to pay them any attention. When snow covered the beach, she stared gloomily at Monica running in the morning, jealousy growing wildly inside her like weeds, tormenting her until she could barely breathe. Finally, she could no longer suppress her impulses and secretly slipped into her son's room. At this moment, Tommy was sleeping soundly, and she thoughtfully pulled the blanket over him, then slipped under the covers herself. In his sleep, Tommy mistook it for his girlfriend returning, and he instinctively turned over to get close to her. But the moment he touched her, he realized something was wrong and sat up in fright. Looking closely, it was his mother lying beside him. Although confused, he didn't think much of it, only assuming his mother was too cold, and he hurriedly put on his pants. At that moment, Monica returned, and Rebecca quickly covered herself with the blanket, leaving only a small gap. She watched Monica eagerly embrace Tommy, and jealousy instantly flooded her heart. Tommy also felt the embarrassment, and he did not want his mother to witness such a scene, so he quickly pulled Monica out the door, leaving his mother alone in endless loneliness. Gradually, Monica began to notice that the relationship between Tommy and his mother seemed to lack boundaries. Even though Tommy was 20 years old, he often remained close to his mother, kissing and hugging her. At first, Monica only thought that Tommy and his mother had a close relationship, but when her boyfriend burrowed into Rebecca's clothes to act spoiled, the smile on her face gradually froze, because this had already gone beyond the bounds of a normal mother and son. If Tommy had been just a small child, it wouldn't matter, but now he was an adult, and he should keep proper distance from his mother. Tommy also realized he had gone too far and quickly ran off in embarrassment. Late at night, Rebecca sat alone in her room, quietly listening to the sounds of the young couple next door, her heart filled with bitterness, jealousy nearly driving her to collapse. And whenever Tommy was not home, the two women barely spoke, as if separated by an invisible wall. Especially when Monica saw the intimate gestures between mother and son, she wanted to ask, but dared not. The next day, Tommy suddenly went for a winter swim in the sea, and when he and his mother returned home, they found an uninvited guest standing at the door. It was none other than Thomas's mother. When Judith saw Tommy's face, almost identical to her son's, she froze instantly, her eyes filling with tears, and she stared at Tommy for a long time, as if searching for traces of her son in his face. Rebecca stood by nervously, afraid that Judith would reveal everything, and the moment Tommy saw the old woman, he felt a strange sense of closeness, as if there was some deep connection between them. Fortunately, Judith said nothing in the end. She only silently patted Rebecca's arm, and then turned to leave. Tommy gazed at the distant figure, his instincts telling him that this strange old woman must be connected to his origins. Rebecca did not answer. She only covered her face and wept in silence. That night, the scenes of the day replayed endlessly in Tommy's mind, and in frustration, he climbed into his mother's bed and once again asked who the old woman was, but she still remained silent. Unable to get an answer, Tommy grew increasingly agitated. The next day at the table, he lost his temper over a toothpick, frightening both Rebecca and Monica, especially Monica, who had no idea what was happening. But that was not enough. Tommy angrily grabbed a handful of salt and scattered it all over the table. Then he locked himself in the bathroom and refused to come out no matter what. Rebecca and Monica anxiously stayed outside the door, gently coaxing him, but he ignored them completely. Monica could no longer endure his erratic behavior, nor the ambiguous emotions between mother and son, and in despair, she decided to leave. And Tommy did not try to stop her. For a while, the house was left with only mother and son, and all he wanted now was to uncover the truth about his origins. Rebecca thought for a long time and finally decided to tell the truth. Then she took out her husband's laptop and handed it to Tommy. When Tommy saw the photograph of himself with the old woman, he was stunned because he clearly remembered that as a child he had never met her, let alone taken a picture together. Rebecca then slowly revealed everything, telling him that when she was 9 years old, her family moved to the seaside, and it was there she met her husband Thomas, who was her age, and with just one glance, she was deeply drawn to him. The next day, Thomas came to her side of his own accord, casually took the pear she was eating, and without hesitation, took a big bite. Rebecca's heart raced, and she thought he must have felt the same way about her. She secretly kept the pear core he left behind as a token of love, longing for their next meeting. After that, Thomas came to see her every day. They ran together on the beach, played in the waves, sat on the old boat gazing at the sea, and watched snails crawl slowly, time passing like magic, fast and beautiful. When they were tired, Rebecca stayed at his house, keeping each other company and warm, like the most beautiful fairy tale childhood companions. But this happy time did not last long, because Rebecca's family was about to move to Tokyo, where her mother had found a good job. The sudden farewell left them both heartbroken, and on the eve of parting, Thomas kissed Rebecca, then called later to promise he would come to say goodbye. But the next day, Rebecca waited, and Thomas never came, so she could only leave with regret. 12 years passed in the blink of an eye. Rebecca had grown into a graceful young woman, and with her longing for that pure love, she returned once again to the seaside town, hoping to find the figure she had never forgotten. But when she found Thomas's home, his mother told her that he had moved out and gave Rebecca his new address. When she followed the address with excitement, she saw a scantily clad woman lying lazily on the bed. At that moment of shock, Thomas returned. Though the years had changed him slightly, they still recognized each other at a glance, and the familiar feeling had never left. Rose, left aside, was completely bewildered, watching them speak in a private language only they could understand, as if an invisible wall separated her. They ignored her presence and talked about the beautiful past, and Rose could no longer bear it, storming out in anger. Thomas did not go after her, because his whole heart was consumed by the woman he had longed for all these years. They went together to the seaside, where they had often gone as children, sharing their dreams and secrets with each other. Rebecca carefully asked if his girlfriend would be angry, but Thomas casually replied that he had only met her yesterday, implying that the relationship carried no weight. For Rebecca, this was undoubtedly good news, and the spark of love between them quickly reignited. But she still couldn't let go of Thomas breaking their promise all those years ago. Upon learning she still remembered, Thomas was surprised and happily dug out the gift he never got to give her. Rebecca gently opened the matchbox, and inside lay a long, dead snail. It turned out that Thomas had always regarded it as a token of their love, raising it for a year. but in the end, it still died. This time, fate brought them together again, and they both resolved not to miss each other anymore. They were inseparable, as if trying to make up for all the time that had been lost. But happiness did not last long. On their honeymoon trip, Rebecca suddenly needed to use the restroom, and Thomas kindly pulled the car over, ready to step out and smoke while waiting. At that moment, a loud crash shattered the silence, and when Rebecca turned back, she saw Thomas lying in a pool of blood, witnessing her beloved die in a car accident. Before her eyes left her utterly devastated. After taking care of Thomas's funeral, she found a note in the box that once held the snail, and in childish handwriting it said, "I will always wait for you." Seeing this romantic vow pierced her heart with grief, and she lost all desire to eat or drink. Looking at the photos of Thomas on the laptop, she made a bold and desperate decision. She went to Thomas's parents and begged them to agree to clone him. But the question remained, who would give birth to this child? Rebecca firmly stated that she was willing to take on the responsibility. Thomas's parents, filled with grief and touched by her love, finally signed the consent for cloning. When Tommy heard the entire story, he was stunned because he had always despised clones and never imagined that he himself was the result of cloning. His emotions spiraled out of control instantly. He violently grabbed Rebecca by the neck and threw her hard onto the bed. Caught in a severe identity crisis, Tommy began to doubt his own existence. Step by step, he approached Rebecca, staring at the woman whose fate was bound with his, uncertain whether she was his lover or his mother. Rebecca's heart was also torn in conflict. Through Tommy, she remembered her lost love, but she could not let go of the years of being a mother. All her emotions finally condensed into one sentence: "You are still here." But Rebecca's words only made Tommy feel that he was nothing more than a replacement, and in extreme anger and confusion, he crossed the boundaries of morality and had a relationship with her. Afterwards, Tommy did not know how to face her, nor how to face his own life, so he chose to run away, leaving Rebecca alone in the small house by the sea. But Rebecca was not alone, because soon she discovered that she was carrying Tommy's child. And that was the end of the story. Although the plot of this film is bizarre, the subject matter is fresh. There are many films about cloning, but this was the first to explore the relationship between cloning technology and social ethics. Should cloning technology be allowed, and does it truly align with morality? If humans completely mastered cloning, would you use it to bring back a loved one who had passed away? That is why many films have speculated about cloning. But does such technology really fit with social ethics? Just as shown in the film, if you clone your lover into your womb and give birth to him, then is that baby your lover or your child? From genetics, the child has no relation to the woman. She is only providing a vessel. But from age, the difference is far too great. Can love really continue in such a way? And even more exaggerated is Dima, who was actually born because her mother cloned her own mother and gave birth to her. Then, who exactly is whose mother? Although she made this choice out of longing for her loved ones, the relationships became hopelessly tangled, and it clearly violated morality. Every life is unique. Cloning does not equal complete replication, because the social identity of a person cannot be copied. We should cherish the present, treat our parents with kindness, love our children, and strive to leave no regrets.